Most people assume that vision decline after 65 is simply written into their genes, something inherited, something inevitable, something to quietly accept, but that assumption isn't entirely accurate. Research suggests there's a small, consistent nightly habit that plays a measurable role in how well your eyes hold up over the next 10, 20, even 30 years. And almost no one over 70 realizes this window exists every single night, whether they use it or not. Think about what's actually at stake here. It's not abstract. It's being able to read a birthday card from a grandchild without holding it at arm's length, without asking someone else to read it aloud for you. It's recognizing a familiar face across a crowded room before they recognize you. It's feeling confident enough to drive yourself home after dark instead of quietly giving up that independence because your night vision isn't what it used to be. These aren't small things. For many people, they're the quiet markers of staying fully in charge of their own life. And later in this video, I'm going to walk you through exactly why the timing of this habit, specifically doing it before sleep rather than earlier in the day, appears to matter more than most people assume. It's a detail almost never discussed in a routine appointment, simply because there isn't time to cover it. But by the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly what to eat, when to eat it, and why this particular habit carries more weight at your age today than it would have at 40. This isn't about reversing time, it's about protecting what you still have deliberately and starting tonight. Over the years, I've sat across from thousands of patients in their 60s, 70s, and 80s, and one pattern keeps repeating itself. People are far more curious about their eye health than a typical appointment gives them room to explore. 12 minutes is rarely enough to explain both what's happening and why, let alone how daily habits like diet timing factor into long-term outcomes. Here's what the research actually tells us. The retina is one of the most metabolically demanding tissues in the entire body. It consumes oxygen and nutrients at a remarkably high rate, which means it's also more vulnerable to oxidative stress over time. This is part of why antioxidant-rich nutrition has been studied so closely in relation to slowing age-related macular changes. Large trials, including the AREDS and AREDS-2 studies, have examined how specific nutrients relate to macular health, and those findings remain a meaningful reference point for anyone interested in this topic. At the same time, sleep plays a quieter but equally important role. Much of the eye's cellular repair activity occurs during rest, when the body isn't competing for energy and resources elsewhere. None of this is secret information. It isn't hidden or withheld. It's simply undercommunicated, a casualty of how modern healthcare is structured, where time constraints often leave nutrition and lifestyle strategy as an afterthought rather than a core part of the conversation. That's the gap this video is meant to fill, not by replacing your doctor's guidance, but by giving you the deeper context that a rushed appointment rarely allows for, so you can walk into your next eye exam already understanding the mechanisms at play and already taking steps to support them. Section 1, why nighttime timing matters more than the fruit itself. Let's build on what we just covered about sleep and cellular repair, because this is where timing becomes just as important as nutrition itself. During sleep, the eye isn't simply resting, it's actively engaged in repair, clearing out cellular waste, supporting tissue maintenance, and using available nutrients to sustain the retina's demanding workload. The question worth asking is, are the right nutrients actually present in your system during that window, or have they already been used up hours earlier? Most people eat fruit at breakfast, simply out of habit. It's what we were taught growing up, fruit in the morning alongside coffee or cereal. But by the time evening arrives and the body shifts into its overnight repair processes, those morning nutrients have long since been metabolized and used elsewhere. The overnight window arrives with very little left in reserve. This is why shifting a small serving of fruit, kiwi in particular, given its nutrient density, to 30 to 60 minutes before bed may align more closely with when the eye is doing its most important repair work. It's not about eating more, it's about eating at a time that better matches the body's natural rhythm. I think of a patient of mine, 74 years old, who made this exact shift about a year ago. He didn't overhaul his entire diet. He simply moved his evening snack, which was already fairly healthy, to include a kiwi before bed instead of fruit earlier in the day, alongside a few other small adjustments to his sleep routine. Over several months, he mentioned almost in passing that he felt more confident driving at night than he had in years. I want to be careful here. This is one person's experience, not a controlled study, and I can't tell you his night vision improved because of the kiwi alone. But it's a meaningful illustration of how small, sustainable shifts tend to compound quietly over time. That's really the heart of this section. This isn't about a dramatic overhaul of your diet or your evenings. It's about one small, deliberate adjustment, timing, not quantity, that aligns with what your body is already trying to do while you sleep. And that matters because the habits that actually last aren't the ambitious ones. They're the small ones that fit quietly into a life you already have that you barely notice yourself doing after a few weeks. That's exactly the kind of habit we're building here. Section 2, the 2 nutrients your retina is quietly running low on. Now that we understand why timing matters, let's talk about what you're actually delivering during that overnight window, because not all nutrients matter equally when it comes to eye health. There are 2 specific compounds worth knowing by name: lutein and zeaxanthin. These are carotenoids, and unlike most nutrients that circulate broadly throughout the body, these two concentrate specifically in the macula, the small central part of the retina responsible for sharp, detailed vision. Their job is twofold. First, they act as a natural filter for high energy blue light, absorbing it before it can cause cumulative stress to sensitive retinal tissue. Second, they function as localized antioxidants, working directly where oxidative damage tends to accumulate over the years. And here's the important part: levels of both compounds tend to decline naturally with age, right at the moment your eyes need them most. Most seniors I speak with think in broad terms: I take a multivitamin or I eat pretty healthy. That's a reasonable instinct, but it often misses the point. Eating healthier in a general sense isn't the same as specifically supplying the 2 compounds your macula is quietly running low on. This isn't about vague wellness, it's about precision. The encouraging news is that these nutrients aren't exotic or hard to find. Kiwi contains meaningful amounts, and pairing it with leafy greens like spinach or kale, along with eggs, which contain a highly absorbable form of these carotenoids, gives your body a consistent, accessible supply. I remember a patient, a woman in her early 70s, who was genuinely surprised by this. She ate what most people would call an excellent diet: lean proteins, whole grains, plenty of fruit. But when we talked specifically about lutein and zeaxanthin, she realized her diet, while generally healthy, wasn't necessarily targeting these 2 compounds directly. It wasn't a failure on her part. It's simply not information most people are given. That's really the shift I want you to make today. Not eating better in some abstract sense, but understanding that your retina is quietly asking for 2 very specific building blocks, and that a small intentional adjustment, like an evening kiwi alongside leafy greens or eggs, can help meet that need directly. Small, precise choices tend to outperform vague good intentions, and this is exactly the kind of precise, targeted habit worth holding on to. Section 3, vitamin C, collagen, and the structure of the eye. So far, we've talked about repair timing and about the 2 carotenoids your macula depends on. Now let's turn to something most people associate with an entirely different part of the body: vitamin C. Ask most people what vitamin C is good for, and they'll say immunity, fighting off a cold, supporting the immune system during flu season. That's not wrong, but it's incomplete. Vitamin C plays an equally important role in something far less discussed: collagen production. Collagen is the structural protein that maintains the integrity of the cornea, the eye's clear outer surface, along with the small blood vessels that supply the eye with oxygen and nutrients. Without adequate collagen support, that structural integrity can gradually weaken over time, quietly, without obvious symptoms, until the effects become noticeable. This is where kiwi becomes particularly useful again. For its size, kiwi is unusually dense in vitamin C, often exceeding what you'd get from an equivalent serving of orange. But density alone isn't the full story. What actually matters most is consistency, not quantity. A small, steady daily amount of vitamin C appears to support the structural maintenance far more effectively than occasional large servings. Your body doesn't store excess vitamin C for later use, it uses what's available, and the rest is simply lost. That means a big citrus breakfast on Monday does very little to help your eyes on Thursday. I think of a patient who is confident his diet had this covered. He ate a large citrus breakfast, most mornings, orange juice, a grapefruit, sometimes both, and assumed that alone was sufficient. What he hadn't considered was that consistency throughout the week, and particularly in the evening, mattered just as much as the total quantity. It wasn't that his habit was wrong, it simply wasn't structured around how the body actually uses this nutrient. Here's why this matters emotionally as much as physically. Structural eye health is invisible. You don't feel your cornea weakening. You don't notice small blood vessels losing integrity. It stays silent until one day it isn't, until reading becomes harder or your eyes feel drier and more irritated than they used to. This is quiet, preventive maintenance. Not dramatic, not urgent feeling, but exactly the kind of steady, unglamorous habit that protects something you'd notice immediately if it were gone. Section 4, the sleep eye connection, almost no one explains. We've talked about nutrients and timing, but there's one more piece of this puzzle that ties everything together, and it's one almost no one connects to eye health directly: the quality of your sleep itself. Most people file eye health and sleep health under two completely separate categories, as if one has nothing to do with the other. But the reality is more intertwined than that. Poor sleep quality has been linked to reduced tear production, which contributes to the gritty, irritated feeling many people mistake for simple aging. It's also associated with increased eye strain, and as we discussed earlier, slower overnight cellular repair, the very process the retina depends on to recover from a full day of use. This is where kiwi's role becomes twofold rather than singular. Beyond its nutrient density, some research has pointed to kiwi consumption before bed being associated with improved sleep onset and overall sleep quality, likely related to compounds that support the body's natural transition into rest. This doesn't mean kiwi is a sedative or a sleep aid in the traditional sense. It means the habit we've been building throughout this video may be supporting two systems at once: nutrient delivery and sleep quality, rather than working in isolation. That's precisely why pairing your evening kiwi with a consistent bedtime routine matters. Going to sleep and waking at roughly the same time each day, dimming lights in the hour beforehand, and keeping that small evening habit consistent all work together, reinforcing the very repair window we discussed earlier. I recall a patient who came to me primarily concerned about eye strain, dryness, fatigue by early evening, difficulty focusing on small print by day's end. As we worked through several adjustments together, including more consistent sleep timing, she noticed her eye strain complaints gradually eased over the following months. I want to be careful with how I frame this. Her sleep improving and her eye comfort improving happened together, and it's a reasonable illustration of the connection, not proof that one directly caused the other, but it reflects exactly the kind of relationship the research points toward. Here is the emotional core of this section. Most people fight for their vision and their sleep as if they're two separate battles, fought with two separate strategies. They aren't. Protecting your sleep is, in a very real sense, protecting your vision. When you treat these as one connected effort rather than two disconnected chores, the small habit we've been discussing throughout this video becomes even more powerful because it's supporting both at the same time, quietly, every single night. Before we move forward, I'd genuinely like to hear from you. In the comments below, tell me your age and let me know, do you already eat fruit in the evening, or is this a completely new idea for you? I ask because it helps me understand who's watching, and honestly, it's encouraging to see how many of you are engaging with information like this at all. You're part of a generation that's far more proactive about protecting your health than the one before it, and that shift matters more than you might realize. Now that we've covered why this habit works, let's shift into something equally important: how to do it safely, particularly if you're managing other health conditions. Let's step back for a moment from the mechanisms and talk about what all of this is really for. It's standing in your kitchen, reading the dosage on a prescription label without needing to hand it to someone else or hold it under a brighter lamp than usual. It's pulling into a parking lot and spotting your grandchild waving from 3 rows away, recognizing their face before they even reach the car. It's getting into your own car after an evening appointment, driving yourself home in the dark with the same quiet confidence you had decades ago, instead of calling someone to come pick you up. These moments don't feel significant until you imagine them slipping away. That's what makes vision different from so many other health concerns. It doesn't announce itself loudly. It erodes quietly in small increments until one day the version of independence you always took for granted requires help you didn't used to need. I want to be clear about what this video is actually offering you. It isn't a promise to reverse time or restore vision to what it was at 40. That's not realistic, and I won't pretend otherwise. What this is about is protecting the version of independence you have right now, today, at whatever age you're watching this, and giving it the best possible chance to continue. This is not a dramatic intervention. It won't feel exciting. There's no single moment where you'll notice a sudden change and feel triumphant. That's precisely the nature of habits like this one. They're small, unglamorous, and easy to underestimate in the moment, but they compound. Quietly, night after night, they accumulate into something meaningful over months and years. Aging isn't a decline you simply endure. It's a continuation of the same life, the same independence, the same person you've always been. Small, consistent choices like the one we've discussed tonight are how you protect that continuation, one ordinary evening at a time. Let's bring everything together into something simple and practical because information only matters if it's usable. Here's exactly how I'd suggest starting in 4 manageable steps. First, add 1 kiwi or an equivalent lutein and vitamin C rich food to your evening 3 to 4 nights a week. That's it. Not every night, not multiple servings, just a modest, consistent starting point. Second, pair that small habit with a consistent bedtime. Try to go to sleep around the same time each night, even on weekends. This isn't about being rigid. It's about giving your body a predictable rhythm to work with, so the overnight repair processes we discussed have a stable window to operate in. Third, mention this change at your next eye exam. Tell your doctor you've started this habit and ask them to keep it in mind when reviewing your results over time. This isn't about replacing their expertise, it's about giving them useful context so any changes, positive or otherwise, can be tracked accurately. Fourth, once this evening habit feels automatic, usually a few weeks in, once it no longer requires thought, consider layering in leafy greens at lunch or dinner. Spinach, kale, or similar vegetables complement what you're already doing without requiring you to overhaul your entire diet at once. I want to be direct about 2 things. First, this is not about megadosing. More is not better here, and taking excessive amounts of any nutrient, whether through food or supplements, is not the goal and is not supported by the evidence we've discussed. Second, and just as important, this habit is not a replacement for medical treatment. If you have an existing eye condition, are on medication, or have been told to monitor your vision closely, this is a complement to your care, not a substitute for it. Small, gradual stacking, one habit added at a time, is what actually lasts, not a dramatic overhaul, not urgency, just steady, deliberate progress you can sustain for years. Let's bring this full circle. Everything we've covered tonight comes down to one small, well-timed habit, a modest evening food choice, supported by consistent sleep, aimed at giving your eyes the specific nutrients and repair conditions they need most. Not a dramatic transformation, not a miracle fix, just a quiet, consistent form of support, repeated night after night. I want to leave you with something worth remembering. Your eyes have carried you through decades of memories, every face you've recognized, every sunset you've watched, every word you've read to someone you love. This isn't about fixing something broken. It's about giving that lifelong partnership a little more support precisely at the stage of life when it matters most. Before you go, I'd like you to sit with one question. What's one thing you'd hate to lose the ability to see clearly? Maybe it's a grandchild's handwriting in a birthday card. Maybe it's the road ahead of you on a quiet evening drive. Whatever comes to mind, let that be your reason for starting tonight rather than someday. If tonight's video resonated with you, there's a related habit worth exploring next. One just as simple, just as overlooked, but tied to a different sense entirely. In the next video, I'll walk you through the morning habit that protects your hearing in much the same way this one protects your eyes. Small, deliberate, and easy to build into a life you already have. Take care of yourself. I'll see you there.